right. Welcome to today's IoT People event about IT security, proudly sponsored by Blue Fragments. Today's event is going to be recorded, and if you do not consent, please leave the meeting. My name is Thomas Martinsen, and I will be your moderator today. And for the event today, I found a lot of awesome speakers. It's Joseph from Microsoft, it's Chris also from Microsoft, and it's Kim and Stein from also Energy. So a big welcome to you guys, and also a big welcome to all of our online participants. It's really great to see so many people joining us today. It is a really important subject that we're gonna talk about. IT security is important, especially with IoT becoming more and more mainstream in our society. Previously, I have talked to Joseph about IoT security in my role as CEO in Blue Fragments, and we had a really good talk about how to use IT security, and I was quite impressed to see how far Microsoft actually is when it comes to adding an extra layer of security to the infrastructure by adding security all the way down to the actual IoT devices. So a big welcome to you, Joseph. It's really great to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and I really appreciate the invite to speak about IoT security. And I'm also proud about how seriously Microsoft, they take security and how they keep investing in security. So my name is Joseph Nono. I'm an IoT devices specialist based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, and I work for Microsoft's IoT and mixed reality team that covers Europe, Middle East, and Africa. In my role, I work with customers and partners and build IoT solutions that uses Microsoft's edge technologies, where one of them is the Azure Sphere solution that you'll hear more about later in this presentation. With me today, I have my colleague, Chris Cassidy. Chris, will you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Yusuf. So good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Cassidy. I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft, working in the same IoT sales team as Joseph. I focus on our edge technologies, including Azure Sphere, which we'll talk about today. I'm based in the UK, but I cover the EMEA region.
Great. And we also have one of our partners with us today, also Energy, where Kim and Stein is joining and telling about their solution. Kim and Stein, will you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kim Tandberg, working as a sales manager for Also Energy. It's a part of Also Hot Water Group, manufacturer of water heaters. And in Also Energy, we are focusing on how the water heaters can help to balance the power grid. So yeah, Stein.
Yeah, my name is Stein. Work as a product manager. I'm following up the development of our IoT-enabled water heaters.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction. During the presentation today, it's possible to ask questions. You can either do that through the live chat in YouTube or using Slido. I will write all of the questions down along the way, and afterwards I will ask the guys here all of the questions. And with that, I will give the word to you, Joseph. Let me add your presentation here. And give it a go.
Great. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. All right. So this is the agenda for today. I'll kick the session off and talk about IoT and its security challenges. My colleague Chris will then introduce our Azure Sphere solution, which solves some of these challenges. We'll then have our customer case, also energy. And Kim, he will talk about how they have created an innovative and secure IoT solution. Gartner, they estimate that there will be 40 billion connected devices by 2025. There's really an explosion in the amount of devices that are being connected to the internet. And companies, they're investing heavily in IoT because of all of the opportunity it brings. This includes reducing costs, delivering more value to end customers, streamlining operations, and also creating completely new business models where you can go from selling pumps to water as a service, or you can go from selling compressors to selling air as a service. And as you will hear about today, how also energy is unlocking the power of water heaters to provide flexibility to the grid. And we're seeing more and more businesses starting to create these business model transformations by connecting their devices to the internet. IoT brings tremendous opportunities, but it also brings tremendous risk. 40 billion devices is really a significant amount of devices. If we are 8 billion people on Earth, then that equals to 5 connected devices per person. And this enormous scale is creating one of the biggest challenges for IoT security. And we're seeing new headlines every day and hearing about more and more companies that are forced to pay millions of dollars to ransomware hackers who leave their devices useless. And one of the most famous hacker attacks is the Mirai botnet attack, which took down the internet on the east coast of the United States for a better part of a day. And it did it by hacking hundreds of thousands of connected devices. And it's a really great example of how scale matters. These hundreds and thousands of devices, unsecure IoT devices, they're not left useless. The hackers, they didn't steal any confidential data, but instead what they did was to leverage the compute power of these very small devices to actually perform a DDoS attack, and the result was devastating. Besides scale and volume, there are also other aspects that create security challenges for IoT, including adding bidirectional communication to a device. Traditionally, or pre-IoT, you could say, devices such as your microwave, your alarm clock, fridge, washing machine, they were developed with a fire and forget approach. This means that someone wrote some software so the device could perform their task. And as these devices were never connected to the internet, nothing were changed, and therefore fire and forget. But what we are starting to see today is that many devices that was not traditionally connected to the internet start to actually become connected to the internet. And there is a bidirectional communication between the cloud and the devices. And this is a two-way street, one to the cloud and one to the devices. And hackers, they can come in to attack the devices through this remote connection. And this means that these single-use devices now can actually become general-purpose computers where any software can run on it, and it can be weaponized by an attacker, just as we saw in the Mirai botnet attack. Another aspect is that IoT devices, they are often placed out of a company's security perimeter, so out in the field, and this really adds more complexity and attack vectors, as a hacker can now have unlimited access to your devices, and they can start to hack the device physically and start to reverse engineer it. And that is something that we at Microsoft have a lot of experience with from our Xbox gaming consoles. Another aspect is that IoT devices, they typically have limited compute power. They don't have a lot of memory or fast processor, and they are in many cases not running a robust operating system. But instead, they could be running bare metal code or a real-time operating system that doesn't have security measures built into it. So because these devices are very resource constrained, they won't be able to run the security solution that we have today that runs on larger devices such as our Windows PCs. And it also means that traditionally there has been very limited security options for IoT devices. And cyber attacks, they put businesses at risk. We're seeing devices that were meant to create a lot of value, which are now being hacked and held for ransom. We're seeing devices being used for malicious purposes as well, such as baby monitors that have been used to spy on families. We've seen devices that have been used to steal data and intellectual property rights. And we've even seen devices being used to attack networks and being pulled into a botnet that really does harm to the critical infrastructure. And these cyber attacks can be really expensive. So you could imagine coming to work one day and find out that all of your devices located all around the world are bricked. You could think about the logistics, the cost of rolling trucks worldwide to replace all of your devices. And then you have the downtime and the damage that your brand could have from just one attack. IP theft can also turn a very highly differentiated product or solution into a commodity. And especially in Europe, what we're seeing is that with the regulations that we have on data privacy, companies, they can face a hefty fine for up to 20 million euros or 4% of their gross annual turnover, whatever is highest, if they fail to comply with the GDPR. And all of these risks are why companies, they must think about security when it comes to IoT and hardware. And security must be the foundation of your solution, because it can be very difficult and costly, if not impossible, to add security after you have deployed your devices. I'll now give the word to my colleague Chris Cassidy, who will talk about Azure Sphere, and you'll also learn about how you can build highly secure devices.
Thank you, Yusuf. Next slide, please. So how do you fully secure a device? As soon as it's connected to the internet, your assets are exposed. So Microsoft carried out an internal research project to determine what was required, and they identified these 7 properties. So only if you have these 7 properties in place can you fully secure your device. So if you require more details on these properties, there is a URL at the bottom of this page where we go into these properties in detail. As part of this research project, we also took learnings from the Xbox family of consoles. So this is a well-known product and it's a high-profile target for hackers. So the very first Xbox only had 2 of these properties in place, and it only took a few weeks to hack. And once it's hacked, then hackers can install software at their will and they can break the business model of the console. The second iteration, the Xbox 360, this had 4 properties in place and it took 3 months to hack. So it had more security, but still hackers were able to compromise the device. Then the Xbox One family of consoles, the first iteration was available in 2013, and this actually has all 7 properties in place. And although this device has been available and in the market for 8 years now, it's yet to be hacked, which is quite a good thing considering it's such a high profile device. So in terms of these properties, you can see that they're a combination of software, for example, passwordless certification, hardware providing the root of trust, and cloud services for the renewable security. i.e. the ability to update your device. So we put all this together for our Azure Sphere solution. Next slide, please. So as I said, Azure Sphere is an integrated solution at MCU level, providing both the hardware, the software, and the cloud service. So we have certified hardware, a targeted OS for those certified chips, and then a security device maintaining those deployed devices. And this is all backed up by Microsoft security team monitoring for critical security vulnerabilities. So this integrated solution allows the solution developer or device manufacturers to focus on their applications. Next slide, please. So first of all, we have the Azure Sphere certified system on chips. And what we have here is a new class of MCU called a crossover MCU. And it provides a combination of processor cores. For example, Cortex-A level cores for high-level applications, and Cortex-M cores for any real-time requirements you may have. For example, integrating with existing hardware. The Pluton security subsystem is built into the chip, and this secures the device, both providing a dependable hardware root of trust and also maintaining a hardware firewall on the device to ensure that applications only access what they are meant to. And in addition to this, all Azure Sphere certified chips provide on-chip network connectivity. So our first chip is the MediaTek MT3620, and this has a Cortex-A7 paired with two M4 cores, and it has a built-in Wi-Fi subsystem. Ethernet and cellular are also supported via a multi-chip solution, and other chips will be available in future in conjunction with our silicon partners. Next slide, please. On the software side, here you can see that the software architecture of the Azure Sphere chip, unlike many RTOSes that run on this level of device, the software stack provides defense in depth security. So at layer 1, you have the security monitor. This runs within the trusted computing base and controls access to the device's resources. Layer 2, you have the kernel. So believe it or not, Microsoft have developed their own custom Linux kernel, which has been stripped down and removes any user logins, console support, and has been hardened for these specific chips. And then you have layer 3, the cloud services. So this middleware integrates with our cloud service and automatically handles the authentication and attestation process and the update mechanisms of the device, both for the OS provided by Microsoft and for your own applications. And at the top level, you have your applications, and these are contained within secure compartments. So you have your high-level application on the Cortex-A processor, which can connect to the cloud, and then any Cortex-M applications for any real-time code you require, whether that's a bare metal application or an RTOS of your choosing. Next slide, please. Finally, you have the cloud component, the Azure Sphere Security Service. This is used to broker device-to-cloud authentication for Sphere-based devices, and also is a platform used to update deployed devices. So how does this work? When a device first powers up, if it's a device with Sphere integrated into the device, it will check in with the Azure Sphere Security Service. The unique device ID of the device is authenticated, and the software components are remotely attested. So the bootloader, the OS, and the applications are all checked to ensure that they are the correct versions and they are correctly signed. Only once the device passes this validation process, then the Azure Sphere Security Service issues a device certificate to that device, which you can then use to authenticate with another cloud service for its telemetry endpoint. So on the diagram here, on the left-hand side, you see the device management part, where Azure Sphere Security Service authenticates the device. And on the right-hand side, once the device has been authenticated, the certificate that is handled by the Azure Sphere Security Service can be used to authenticate with either Azure, a third-party cloud service, or even on-premise infrastructure, i.e. a local server. Another feature of the Azure Sphere Security Service is the ability to update your devices. So the back-end infrastructure for the Azure Sphere Security Service is used to push out OS updates from Microsoft, but you could also leverage this to host your own application updates, and they can be pushed out to specific devices, whether that's based on their product type, their location, or the end customer. And all this process is integrated into the Sphere solution. Next slide, please. Finally, it's also worth pointing out that Azure Sphere can be used in brownfield scenarios. So where you have existing equipment with a local interface, you could connect an Azure Sphere-based, what we call Guardian device, so a kind of gateway type device to that existing equipment. And this will give you a secure connection to the cloud. So if you have older equipment, expensive equipment that you're not wanting to replace, but it doesn't have network connectivity or doesn't have sufficient security, you can use a Sphere-enabled Guardian device to securely connect it to the cloud, allowing you to extract data and insights from your existing hardware inventory. Back to you, Yusuf.
There you go. Thank you, Chris. Now it's time to introduce our partner, Uso Energy. They are part of the Uso Hot Water Group, which was founded in 1932 and is a leading manufacturer of stainless steel water heaters. They have an impressive 70% market share in Norway, where their headquarters is located, and that is plus 2 million devices, and 50% of their revenue comes from export. The floor is yours, Kim.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Yeah, one of the problems some of the problems we see in Uso Energy is that the electric vehicle adoption and electrification in general is challenging the capacity in the electric grid. And also that renewable energy sources like solar and wind might be producing when we don't need that energy. And during peak hours, every morning when people wants to take a shower before work, or in the evening when people get home from work and cooking dinner, etc. Both of this is challenging to the grid capacity, but many places in the world this also leads to extra power generation with increased greenhouse gas emissions as well. And there are very few devices that can address these peak hour challenges on the demand side. And water heaters consumes from 15 to 50% of the home energy usage. And they are essentially batteries that can store a significant amount of energy. An example is the most normal or standard water heater is a 200-liter tank that can store 14 kilowatt hours of energy. And the way that we can store this amount of energy is that we heat the water up to 75 degrees compared to the standard 60 degrees most for most products in the world. And our idea is that we turn these water heaters into a network of thermal batteries that can be used for grid capacity and constraint management. Next slide, please. And when we are connecting these water heaters that are inside people's homes and also part of critical infrastructure, security is extremely important. And Azure Sphere make this possible to do in a very secure way, where we have end-to-end security from the device to the cloud and to the grid control system, and also to the consumer mobile app. Next slide, Josef. And in one of the projects we have in Norway with Elvia, the largest grid operator in Norway, they are serving more than 2 million people and about 1 million homes. Their challenge is that now 75% of new car sales in Norway is electric. And in addition, there is electrification all over. This gives them especially problems in the weaker part of their grid. And what the OSO Energy can provide is an affordable system at the very edge of the grid that can help them to optimize the power supply. And a really good thing is that the infrastructure for this is already in place, where the water heater has a place in people's home already. So there is no extra installations required. We add a smart controller to the water heaters, and this can be connected to the grid operators. And the silver lining here is that at the end, it's the consumers that are paying for grid upgrades, and with this solution, this will reduce the cost for consumers over time. That was everything I had, Josef. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you very much, Kip. And I believe we'll move on to the Q&A session now.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. It's been really good. So I have collected a few questions. So one of them is a question about, well, I guess the future. So when will we see devices or hardware like the one we see here with Azure Sphere, or the like technology like that in our IoT infrastructure? Maybe that is for you.
Yes. Yeah. I think we'll see more and more Azure Sphere or highly secured devices as more silicon becomes available. So I think one of the biggest challenges today for us is to have enough variety in our silicon, in our chips, so we can meet customers' demands. So the OEMs who are building these devices. And today we have one that is available, and we have a partnership with NXP, and they have already announced the next chip that will be cloud secured. And as we are expanding the number of Azure Sphere certified chips, we will see more and more available products from the device manufacturers. And something that we're seeing today as well is that the end customers, they are demanding more securities. Enterprises, they're demanding more security, and even governments and regulations, they're creating regulations, and even in Europe we have some cybersecurity regulations that are come through. So I think it's a journey, but in the next few years there will definitely be more available hardware.
Yeah. So I guess one of your customers is actually the hardware manufacturers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also got a question. So who's your typical customer for a service like Azure Sphere?
Yeah, and I'll divide it up to two groups. So we have the device builders or the OEMs, and also hot water or also energy is a quite good example of that. They have a device where you can create a lot of value if you connect it to the internet in a secure way. And I think that's the criteria. So if it has to be done in a highly secured way, then we see a lot of customers like also Energy who really has a perfect fit with our solution, because then they can focus on what they're good at, and they can have Microsoft focus on security. Another type of customer is the large enterprises. So one of the first customers that we actually had was Starbucks, and there's a great customer story around Starbucks, and for them the security was very important. So they want to connect with their coffee machine, and it's a mission critical machine for them. It's almost like critical infrastructure because it's what they do, and they wouldn't connect it unless it was highly secure. And then Azure Sphere was a perfect fit, and they actually connected it through this Guardian device approach, where you have a coffee machine, which is super expensive, so you cannot just buy a new one with the connectivity natively. So what they did was to connect it through a Guardian device.
Okay. All right. We also got a question for Oso. So what did it require for you to get started with Azure Sphere?
Dana, I think you are the best one to answer that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think we have had excellent support from Microsoft and Microsoft partners in our development, which is a strong kind of development ecosystem. And in Scandinavia, we've been lucky to cooperate with partners that has already participated and have experience in developing IoT products with Sphere. So I think that has been a key to us, and being able to focus on our application and maximizing the flexibility and providing a good consumer product at the same time, and then having a strong partner support from Microsoft in this development.
All right. And actually another question for you guys. So I know that Azure Sphere is of course locked down to Azure, but we got a question asking if you looked into alternative cloud providers like Google or Amazon and their solutions in this area, and what made you choose Azure?
I think the combination of Azure and Azure Sphere, and being able to link this as an end-to-end value offering with an integrated system has been really important to us. As Kim said, it's a network of thermal batteries, so it's not a single device approach. It's a holistic system approach to make this product, and I think Azure and the combination with Azure Sphere is a unique offering in this regards, and the alternatives would be far more complex. We've seen it.
And a small comment from me as well. So the security service runs in Azure, but the customer is very free to integrate into other clouds or do it on on-prem servers. So there is a freedom you're not locked down, but we will provide the security, and that will come from our servers, obviously.
Yes, the device management platform, the Azure Sphere Security Service, is separate to mainline Azure, and you don't need an Azure subscription to get access to that. That comes automatically when you purchase the Azure Sphere Silicon. You have access to that device management capability. And as Yusuf says, you then, for your data path, you can connect to whichever cloud ingestion point you choose, whether it be Azure or another third-party cloud service.
Yeah, because we also got another question asking which other Azure services you will need. And you can say you have partly answered that, but maybe you can put a few additional words to it.
So obviously the Azure Sphere Security Service itself is kind of fully capable off the shelf to kind of manage your devices in terms of the software lifecycle of the devices. And you can obviously configure your tenant within Azure Sphere Security Service to set up a hierarchy of products and device groups. In terms of additional Azure services, so if you were connecting into Azure for your telemetry, then obviously the standard IoT services would be recommended there. So our device provisioning service, IoT Hub, or our SaaS offering, IoT Central.
Yeah. Nice.
And you could say, sorry, I'll just add the last comment. You could say one of the, Microsoft also done a better together story on that. So these services works quite good together. So Azure Sphere, IoT Hub, DBS, they will work and work quite good together and are integrated compared to if you were to choose another cloud provider.
Yes, that's a good point, Yusuf. So with the Azure Device Provisioning Service, you can set up your Azure Sphere Security Service as a trusted authority, and that's a one-time operation. And that means that every time your Azure Sphere devices are issued a certificate from the Azure Sphere Security Service after the authentication process, which happens on a daily basis, these devices then will then automatically authenticate with the device provisioning service and the back-end services of Azure IoT.
And let's actually stick a little bit to the certification, because we got a question here saying if you could say a little bit more about the Azure Sphere certification of chips. How do you compare that to other emerging certifications like PSA certified?
So when we say certification, basically we are working with our key silicon partners to work with them jointly on both the hardware design and the software design. And that's how we come up with the Sphere certified MCU. So we have this MediaTek chip available currently, but then we're working closely with NXP and their engineers to come up with, so they've announced an IMX8 level chip which is called Cloud Secured, and this is a Azure Sphere certified version of their IMX8 chip. And we'll also be doing the same with a number of chips from their IMX9 family as well. And what this means is that we have jointly developed the chip, and we, with NXP working on the hardware, Microsoft working on the software, and Microsoft installing the Pluton security subsystem onto that chip.
Mm-hmm.
So NXP, they have their own edgelock security subsystem, but we've also installed our Pluton security subsystem on there, which manages the device and integrates well with our cloud service.
A fun fact, Thomas, about the Pluton security subsystem is that it actually also runs on the Xbox, and there's going to be some the new Windows PCs that is like more secured. They will also have this on their chips.
Okay. So a few really specific questions here. So is there support for MicroPython in Azure Sphere and MT3620?
So currently on the MT3620, given the size of the device and the memory that's available, it only supports C. However, when we move to the NXP devices like the IMX8 chip and the IMX9 family, obviously these are more capable MCUs, and we are looking at the options there for other language support, but nothing's been confirmed at this time.
Yeah,
so for the moment on the MT3620, it's C, but on future devices we're looking at the market and what the demand is for different language support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got a question in almost the same, asking if we can run .NET Core on Sphere.
Not on the MediaTek device. Obviously, the runtime for .NET Core is very large, and given this is an MCU level device with limited flash and limited attached RAM, certainly the current device is not capable of running that size of runtime. But obviously, as we broaden the silicon portfolio, we'll have different levels of devices, and we'll have to look at the language support then.
Mm-hmm. And how about the battery consumption from the chips itself? If we begin to put it into devices that is running on battery, how's the battery consumption?
So I would say for the current device that it can be used in a battery scenario, but the consumption is larger than an MCU level, because you have you can't bring up a single core independently. It's all controlled by the Pluton security subsystem. So when you bring up part of the device, more of the device comes online. And so the power draw there is more than a comparable MCU. Now, we do have OEM manufacturers who do have it running off battery, but it may be a device that can be recharged, or it might just be battery as a fallback, and they're intending it to be mains powered, ideally with a battery fallback should mains be unavailable.
All right, awesome. And I think the final question, so if I, as a large company, want to get started using Azure Sphere, how do I get started?
You reach out to me. No, yeah. There's obviously some. We cannot manage all the accounts that we want to, so we are focusing on some, and then we are also helping our partners to empower the ones where we don't have the bandwidth to support them directly. But we go in and support a subset of partners directly. Foco is a good example of that. So it is possible to get started either with direct support from the Microsoft IoT and mixed reality team, or through partners who has experience with Azure Sphere.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we are through all of the questions. It was really interesting. Thank you so much, everybody, for the presentation, for asking all of the questions and giving the answers here. I guess you're always everybody listening. I guess you're welcome to reach out to you, Joseph, right? And what I will do is afterwards, I will put the video here. It will be shared live at the IoT People event site, and also at Blue Fragment's YouTube channel. So you can see all of the contact info there. If you have any questions, you're also welcome to reach out to me or to us through the IoT People group. And with that, I think I will say thank you so much. It's been a privilege to have you all here, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.